Good morning and thanks so much for tuning in. You're watching Trade Talk on BQ Prime. My name is Mathew and with me is Hiral Dadia. Morning, Hiral.
Good morning, Alex.
Well, it was a great start to the trading week for the equity markets here in India, but it seems like there's just a tad bit of a risk-off sentiment pervading global markets right now.
Absolutely. But clearly, if you go to see in terms of the US as well, from an overall perspective, if you look at October, if you look at the start in terms of November, yes, there is that positivity, but as you're mentioning, those one-offs that have started to come in as well. How much will it sustain is what we need to see, but clearly there is that rub-off effect from the positive rub-off effect that's coming in on Indian markets as well, because yesterday's session, if you see in terms of Nifty 50, 180 points up move is what we saw, ended above those 19,400 levels, right? Bank Nifty as well, we've closed above 43,600. Real estate has continued to outshine. Pharma has been in focus, but clearly if you see in terms of pharma, there are bouts that are coming in, right? You're seeing selling, then again buying at lower levels is coming in. So it's interesting, and broader markets, in spite of the sell-off that we've seen from September highs, are still outperforming the benchmark indices.
Absolutely. And if you look at the texture yesterday for the Nifty 50, just about 5 losers on a screen that saw quite a few very positive moves. And those losers didn't lose a large amount of ground as well. And overall, the market breadth very firmly tilted in favor of the advances. And also, interestingly, yesterday you mentioned the Nifty Bank, but it was the private sector banks that were really taking the cake yesterday. It wasn't really the public sector banks. In fact, the public sector bank index was one of the 2 sectoral indices that declined in trade yesterday.
Absolutely. So a decline coming in terms of where PSUs go, whereas the private banks have been outperforming. And now that we know today, we actually kick off the state election polls as well, right? So voting starts in the first phase of Chhattisgarh state elections. 6 months, we're looking at the general elections that do come in. I was just reading a couple of reports, but it's saying that as per history, Nifty 50 has always climbed in the 6 months leading to the elections in the past 5 elections. And the average gains that we've seen is almost around 16%.
16%
exactly, for Nifty 50 in the last 5 years, 5 elections. So that's going to be interesting to watch out for from here on as well, with regards to how markets from current levels, if they have to see this 10 to 15% kind of a growth up to the general elections running up to 2024, what's the kind of up move that probably we could see as well, and whether this becomes the right time to buy? Because yesterday we were discussing with Agam as well, buy on dips, sell on rally. That's something that investors are watching out for. Bottom has been formed as well.
I would be very curious to look at what the skew is in that and whether or not 1 or 2 readings have pushed it to that 16% mark. So perhaps we'll look at it after this show.
Absolutely. And with this, one more sector I want to highlight is the sugar pack. If you see the kind of moves that we saw yesterday, Bajaj Hindustan was in double digits. Other sugar stocks were also up in trade. And the major reason is not only, again, ahead of elections, you are looking out for how prices will be sustained, because global prices are touching the roof. And the major concern is Brazil. In spite of Brazil having a fantastic crop this year, it's the logistics which is causing a concern, because the soybean crop as well as the sugar crop in Brazil has been very good. So both of them are really fighting it out faster. So because of which the prices in terms of the exports for sugar are going up. There's a delay of 25 to 30 days in terms of where shipments go. So that's becoming a concerning area from a Brazil perspective. Thailand is any which way short. India is out of the export market as of now. So all of this is auguring well from a stock price perspective as well for the sugar companies.
Certainly. But, we've discussed already quite a bit of what you will have to bear in mind at the start of trade. But let's get you the key levels to watch based on the F&O data. And Agam is joining in as always to give you some perspective on that. Agam, the line that I took from what Hiral was saying is buy on dips, sell on rally. That seems to be the case from what we're seeing so far.
That is largely a lot of traders out there are playing. They are buying on lower levels and selling once they've seen a little bit of an up move. It's turned out to be a prudent strategy so far. We have seen strength return to the benchmarks. And along with that, we've also started seeing some amount of fresh longs building into the system. So even though the Nifty futures did see a decline in open interest, then the Bank Nifty is starting to build some fresh long positions. Do remember that we continue to head higher higher. In fact, we moved up higher in the last 3 consecutive sessions. Very quickly, as far as your levels go, once again, a lot of activity has now shifted about the 19,300 mark, and that, in fact, is the near-term base as far as this expiry is concerned, based on maximum open interest, and on the higher end, keeping an eye on 19,500. And those are the very same options which are also considerably active, considering we've seen so much addition in open interest there. As far as the Bank Nifty goes, keeping an eye on a 500-point range. To remember, tomorrow is when we see expiries in terms of the Bank Nifty, and again, we're keeping an eye on 43,500. That is the crucial pivot point. Even in today's day of trade. Of course, a lot will also come down to what the Fin Nifty does, considering there are a lot of counters which are same as the Bank Nifty, and it's the Fin Nifty options expiry, so we'll be watching out for that as well.
So that's going to be interesting, and specifically with the way Bank Nifty has been in the last 1 year, I think it's a 4.5% up move in terms of Bank Nifty as well. So what the future holds is going to be interesting. Thanks, Agam, for getting us the number crunching with regards to what the FNO data is indicating. But moving on to the oil and gas space, Alex, you have HPCL that has reported numbers. It's interesting to see because actually on a year-on-year basis, if you go to see, HPCL has swung back into profitability. Last year, the crude prices were at a peak, and that is what had impacted the numbers. Let's head across to Mihika to understand more in terms of what has worked and what has not worked for HPCL. Good morning, Mihika.
Good morning. So I'll start with the net profit. Net profit was down 14% quarter on quarter to the tune of 5,823 crores. However, it did beat analyst estimates of 1,734 crores. Revenue was down 13% and missed analyst estimates, and on a year-on-year basis was down 11%, but this is a trend observed in most of the major oil marketing companies this quarter, and it's mainly on the back of low and volatile crude prices, lower product prices, and lower gross refining margins that are affecting the refinery revenue. The company's average gross refining margin for H1 FY24 was down 17% year-on-year to $10.49 per barrel. EBITDA was down quarter on quarter, but it did beat analyst estimates and was up 80% year-on-year, leading to a margin expansion of 4.43 basis points. In terms of the crude processing output, it achieved the highest ever quarterly crude processing at 5.75 million metric tons in Q2, which is a 28% year-on-year increase. This included the Visakhapatnam refinery processing 3.23 million metric tons and the Mumbai refining handling 2.52 million metric tons. In terms of the marketing side, the total sales, including the exports, rose 3.4%, and the domestic sales also increased 3.02%, which is higher than the industry growth of 2.85%, which is a good thing for the company. And it also maintained its market share in the transport fuels sector, despite the re-entry of private players in the domestic market again. And additionally, the aviation segment in H1 grew 27%, surpassing the industry growth rate of 13.5%. The company also has a lot of expansion plans, especially in the Visakhapatnam refinery, which will increase the refinery's capacity to 13.7 million metric tons per annum. And it also added 189 new retail outlets this quarter, bringing the total to the tune of 21,431 retail outlets.
All right. Thanks so much, Mika, for bringing us those updates. We've got a lot more earnings to talk about, though. So let's discuss a little bit of the fine print of the stocks that are likely to move in trade. In fact, incidentally, one of them is a sugar company. We've got Rishi joining in to give you some perspective. I believe, Rishi, you're starting with Indocount.
Yeah, so in the count, the revenue was up by 19% and it crossed the 1,000 crore mark. And this was primarily on account of 40% growth in volumes to 28.7 million meters. And the PAT was also up 70%. So the stock may react today. Then there's Jamna Auto, where the revenue was up by almost 10%. Margins were also up at 13%. And this was on account of a decline in costs by 15%. Then we have Damia Bharat Sugar, where the revenue was up by over 26% and the PAT was also up at about 55 crores. And this was on account of sugar prices, which have been on an uptick, and they have driven a significant growth in margins. Sugar volumes were also up by 13% and distillery volumes were also up over 52%. Then we have Ashapura Mindchem, where it has posted a good set of numbers compared to the previous quarter, where the revenue was at 555 crores compared to about 200 crores in the previous quarter. But it is also important to note that the previous quarter, the comparable quarter, was a one-off. That's why we are seeing such an uptick in volumes. But regardless, we may see some upside in the stock today. Then there's India Pesticides, where the revenue was down by about 19%. Margins were also down by about 13%. Then there's Honeywell Automation, where the revenue was up by almost 40%, and the cost rose by about 44%, which led to a margin decline. Then we have VMart Retail, where the cost again played a spoilsport in for this company as well, where the EBITDA was down by almost 98% to 66 lakhs compared to previous quarters, 54 crores, and this was because of a significant increase in cost compared to the revenue growth. Then we have VRL Logistics, where EBITDA was again down by about 1% due to a 8% increase in handling costs, and the PAT was down further due to a 28% increase in depreciation costs. Then we have Hitachi Energy, where the revenue was up by 10%, and margins were at about 5% compared to previous quarter 7%. Now the revenue uptake was because of a significant increase in orders that the company got. Then finally I have HLE Glasscoat, where the revenue was again up by 4%. Margins were also at 11.8% due to a 30% higher input cost. So the stock may see some downside today.
Thanks, Rishi. In fact, as we spoke, that in spite of the correction that we've seen from September to now in terms of markets, you have the broader markets that have outperformed, and probably it's the earnings that have come in as a support as well, in spite of the correction that has come in. Thank you, Rishi, for getting us the details in terms of earnings. But moving on, I think one of the key exclusives that we're talking about, Alex, today is Bank of Baroda. Now, the app has been in the news as well. If you talk about
BoB World.
Absolutely, BoB World, and what it has caused in terms of a reputational loss, or will it further cause any damage, is what we need to wait and see. In fact, our banking team has actually worked extensively on it to get us more. Pragati is joining by to get us more. Pragati, yesterday, the stock ended with cuts of nearly 4%. A little bit of exclusive details that you have picked up as well in terms of what's not worked, what's worked, and what is the kind of damage it could cause going ahead. Because if it does, we could see further correction that could come in terms of the stock today. What are you picking up?
You're absolutely right, Hiral. We worked really a lot and we followed the case extensively. So the BoB World app case was going on for quite some time. And initially, it was essentially about the alleged fraudulent onboarding of the customers to increase the numbers. But what happened on Saturday after Akhil Handa's exit, it became a war of words between the former CDO and the top management. So now BQ Prime has found out that what the management and the former CDO have been saying about it being operational lapses may not be the whole story. Sources have confirmed to us that it was also a technical issue and the app was at fault as well. BQ Prime also reviewed some internal documents that showed that employees and third-party workers were being given incentives to increase this customer onboarding, and these incentives were the smallest of things, like a cake cutting ceremony, and even a bigger thing like some monetary benefits. So entirely the story obviously a little bit changes. That's what our research tells us and our findings with sources tell us. Yes, it was a leaky app with poor security, but even the employees and third-party workers gamed the system to earn these monetary benefits. We've explained the entire thing well, and there are more details in the story which our viewers can watch and read on bqprime.com.
Absolutely. You said it. You took the words straight from my mouth. bqprime.com is a site that you can find all the details on. Pragati, thanks so much for joining in. It started very innocuously, and I think most things like this start innocuously, where you're promised something and you maybe do that little bit extra to get the carrot instead of the stick.
And then clearly, I mean, Bank of Baroda, almost a 1.5% weightage is what it has in terms of Bank Nifty as well. So if this is going to aggravate further from here on, further cuts in terms of the stock, because 4% is the kind of cuts we saw yesterday.
Absolutely. Another stock in the financial space that's going to be in focus is Bajaj Finance, and that's on the back of its fundraising plans. A QIP was approved by the board to the extent of 8,800 crores. To get you some of the details, we're joined by Mimantsa. Mimantsa, morning. What are you picking
good morning. Bajaj Finance has launched its QIP issue of rupees 8,800 crore on Monday, and the floor price is set at rupees 7,533.81 per equity share, and the company may offer a discount of up to 5% on the floor price. Before we go ahead, Bajaj Finance had also approved a fundraising through warrants last week to raise 1,189 crore rupees. As for the proceeds coming up for the QIP issue, NBFC intends to use up to rupees 7,040 crore rupees for repayment of loans, commercial papers, NCDs, and interest payments by September 30, 2024. The remaining amount of net proceeds will be used for general corporate purposes. Before we delve into what brokerages are saying, we have some calculations, BQ calculations at end. Bajaj Finance has 60.5 crore outstanding shares. After the fresh issue of shares, the book value is likely to increase to rupees 68,700 crore, accounting for the warrant issue. Macro Research has also raised its target price to rupees 9,190. The increase of 2,890 is quite significant, and rupees 818 is coming from the impact of capital raise.
Right. Thank you, Mimamsa, for getting us the details. I think we'll get Harsh to do a further deep dive in terms of what it could mean from a stock price perspective as well. Thanks for getting us these numbers.
In fact, let's bring Harsh over to get some perspective on that.
That's what exactly.
Yeah.
So, in terms of overall, Harsh, good morning. Firstly, Mimamsa already took us through in terms of what the book value is in terms of specifically from an outstanding shares perspective. What is the other number crunching that you've done on the same, and how does it impact the price to book value?
Right. So first off, let's try and break the book value down, right? The book value accretion as a result of this new fresh fundraise is around 12.5% to 13%. So your book value goes up by around 12.5% to 13%. Typically, NBFCs are valued at price to book, of course, and let's try and break that down. So currently, the price to book is in the range of around 7.5 times price to book is what Bajaj Finance trades at currently. With this fresh fundraise coming through, the book value post money will likely drop to around the 6.5 to 6.7 times price to book mark. Now, to try and compare that to the COVID low of 2020, we saw a price to book of roughly 5.5 times that Bajaj Finance was at. So we're clearly seeing that the price to book has shrunk in comparison to COVID low. What this also adds, this new fundraise, what it essentially adds is it gives a lot of leverage room for Bajaj Finance. Bajaj Finance is levered at 5 times, which is it allows the debt to equity to be at around 5 times currently. So this new fresh fundraise will allow for more funds and therefore more growth for Bajaj Finance going forward. So what this essentially also indicates is, one, valuations have shrunk, but two, there is also scope for further re-rating, for further growth, and this is largely growth capital which is coming through.
Do you think it will impact the ROEs in some way?
So in the short term, it will impact ROEs because you have a larger equity base to work with. But as the growth scales up, 20-30% is what Bajaj Finance currently grows at. The guidance is 25%, but they're growing at 32%. Yeah. So that's significantly more, and that will basically aid the re-rating. So it'll probably be a few quarters where there may be a drag on the ROE, but that re-rating will, the growth will take care of the re-rating.
Especially based on the kind of trajectory they have. So to put things simply, they've raised the ceiling so that they have room to grow.
Correct.
Thank you so much, Harsh, for bringing us that perspective. Let's focus on some of the other stocks that you want to watch out for in trade. And this is on the back of notifications or news that was sent to the exchanges post-market hours yesterday. And Saloni is joining in with a whole host of stocks to tell you about. Morning, Saloni.
Morning. So first we have Cipla. So the company's board approved the transfer of its generic business to its unit, which is Cipla Pharma and Life Sciences. So the business is transferred at a consideration of 350 crores, and the sale is expected to be completed by the end of December this year. Then we have KPR Mill. So firstly, the company is looking to expand its fabric processing capacity. The company is planning on increasing the capacity from 25,000 metric tons to 37,000 metric tons per annum at a capital outlay of 250 crores. This expansion is expected to be completed within a year. And additionally, it has also been proposed to modernize the existing processing facility at an additional investment of 50 crores so as to upgrade the facility. Additionally, the company is looking looking to strengthen its solar power generation capacity. So the company's current rooftop solar power generation capacity is 12 megawatts, and it's looking to establish an additional solar power generation capacity of 25 megawatts at an investment of 100 crores. With this expansion, the company's green power capacity will finally reach 100 megawatts. Then we have Central Bank of India. So the Ministry of Finance extended MV Rao's term as the managing director and CEO till July 31st, 2025, from the current notified term that is ending on November 29th, 2024. Then we have Quest Corp. So the company approved buying 4.5% stake in its unit, which is Vedang Cellular Services, from the promoter for a consideration of 3.05 crores, which will increase the company's total stake to 96.97%. The company also approved the acquisition of an additional 46.09% stake in its unit, Stellar Log Technovation, for 6.8 crores. That will increase the total stake to 100%, which will mean that the company will become a wholly owned subsidiary. Both of these acquisitions are expected to be completed within a month. And then we have two companies whose boards are meeting today. So first we have Atul. So the company's board is meeting to consider a proposal for the buyback of equity shares. And then we have Cochin Shipyard, whose board is meeting to consider a stock split.
Right, so I think both of these will be interesting, and let's see if the buyback is approved by Atul, how much it comes in to support the stock price as well, because that's the reason why you usually see buybacks happening. Thank you, Saloni, for getting us the details. So lots of stocks that we will be focusing on in the secondary market, but the primary market cannot be left behind because a number of IPOs where we need an update that comes in. Firstly, you have ESAF Small Finance Bank and Protein eGov. Both of them are ongoing. Ask Automotive IPO opens today, and you have one of them listing as well. Himansh is standing by to get us more. Himansh, first let's start with Mama Earth, which will be listing today.
Right.
There was a lot of conversation and chitter chatter around it, whether it will be fully subscribed or what will happen, because clearly from a valuation perspective and the buzz perspective, day one, day two was slightly tepid. What have the numbers shown you for it?
Right. So Honasa Consumer actually had a very fair subscription for it and interest as well. The overall 1,700 crore IPO was in fact subscribed over 7 times on its final day. And given the promoters, all-round well-knownness around from Shark Tank as well, it has garnered a lot of interest. But yes, so the shares which will debut on the stock exchanges today, and overall we have seen a lot of interest. Yesterday's Cello World in fact surged over 29% after its listing, and overall I was also looking at 92 IPOs this year, of which 68 of them have seen gains on their listing day, in fact more so with respect to their issue price. So Honasa Consumer is expected to catch the same interest today, if I were to make an estimate. But coming on to the IPO offerings today, we have Ask Automotive, which is going to be opening its bids today. And the manufacturer of brake shoe and advanced braking system for two-wheelers, which is an auto ancillary, is actually a very strong company wherein you have 50% of the market volume that is captured by this company for both OEMs and independent aftermarkets on a combined basis. The company, which started in 1989, has diversified its product offerings to supply to three-wheelers, passenger vehicles, and all-terrain vehicles as well. The offer is set to close day after tomorrow, and the company plans to raise 834 crores purely via an offer for sale. The promoters are going to be the selling shareholders, and they're looking at about a 15% dilution in their stake. The price band is fixed from 268 to 282. Now, coming on to the ESAF Small Finance and others that have been live, the IPO was subscribed 8.31 times on its second day, with non-institutional investors leading the subscription. 20.17 times is the kind of subscription we see there. Retail investors have already subscribed close to 8 times. And then you have Protein e-Government Technologies, where the IPO was subscribed over 1 time on its first day. Slightly tepid response, with non-institutional investors subscribing 1.65 times. Retail investors already close to 1.5 times. Employee and institutional investors are expected to come in slowly as the IPO bid progresses. So these are the captures, the updates from the IPO market.
All right. Thanks so much, Himansh, for bringing us those updates. And watch out for the listing today, as Himansh pointed out. It could well be gains for the first debut, or rather for the debut.
Probably. I mean, but the kind of uptick that investors and promoters have already seen is absolutely massive on this one, right? Now, whether investors have the interest or not is going to be, a key thing to watch, Alex, because Mamaearth was always, as a company, promoted to be for childcare, baby care, right? But if you see their portfolio overall,
They've gone
a
far
very
beyond that.
minuscule portion of the portfolio is baby care, whereas maximum comes in from other products. Now, whether the street is going to be happy with it or not is what we need to see. So that's going to be an interesting one. And a Gift Nifty. It's going to be a slightly flattish move as per Gift Nifty as well, because we've already ended above those 19,400 levels today. Yesterday, I beg your pardon. And if you see Gift Nifty, that's indicating a start in that range of 19,450 to 19,470. So not a major upside that Gift Nifty indicates so far.
Certainly, and we've recouped quite a bit of losses, as was pointed out by one of our colleagues yesterday. I believe that's already on social media. 12 lakh crore of market cap recouped from the low point in the recent past. But that's all we have for you in this edition of Trade Talk. It's been an absolute pleasure bringing it to you. Do stay tuned. Lots more coming up over the course of the day. And this is BQ Prime.
I wish all our consumers, passengers, our employees, our partners, and really all viewers a very happy, most importantly, a very safe Diwali.